My name is Gina Worful, and this is Coursen's Corner.
Well, I haven't seen you in a while.
It's been not very long.
It's been like 3 hours. I'm very excited for the feedback on this episode because our respective community is going to kick out of you and I sitting across from each other.
Totally.
So that's going to be a lot of fun. You and I got the opportunity to meet this morning for coffee. We had a great little drop in. And one of the things that you and I shared was how our respective journeys helped us to not only make ourselves better, but have helped us to become better helpers. I had to run, didn't get to finish that conversation. Definitely wanted to, invited you here, and here we are. Yeah. So one of your focuses in your profession is like going beyond health information. Mm-hmm. One of those things for me and for you, as we discussed this morning, was the emotional safety and security that allows us to better understand those complexities. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it is that our emotional state, I mean, we've talked before about the mind-body connection, but what is it specifically in your professional view that makes that emotional component so impactful in diet, health, nutrition, living a healthy life?
Yeah, it actually comes down to the fact that most of us are using health information to try to change our health. And health information comes from the conscious part of your mind. This very like, what do I need to do to be healthier? But what people don't understand is that what's in our subconscious mind, which is the deeper, almost like an iceberg. The conscious mind is the tip. The subconscious mind is like the deeper part underneath the water that you can't see. And that's where most of our behaviors are actually driven from. And what researchers actually believe is that most of our behaviors are driven from feelings, the feelings and the emotions that we have. And when we're not in touch with those feelings and those emotions, we might be like, I know I'm supposed to eat healthier. I know what to do to be healthy. Why am I not doing it? And it's that deeper feelings, those emotions that are actually driving our behaviors that we're not even really aware of. And so I love helping people understand that connection of like, there's so much more. We are so much more than just what we know about health. Most people know, okay, I know the basics of eating healthy at least. I know like vegetables, good for me.
I'm supposed to track my macros.
Pizza, probably not so good for me. Most people know how to eat healthier. So then they're stuck in this confusion of like, but why do I watch myself do something different when I know what I'm supposed to do? They might even deeply crave and desire so badly to be healthier, but they're not doing it. And it's that emotional connection that it can help you uncover that deeper why.
That's a really interesting point because I think you're right. People know the what, but they don't know the why. And it's kind of like when you're sitting on your dad's lap trying to learn how to drive and you think you're steering, but it's actually someone else that's doing all the work. You think your consciousness is like, even for me, like pre-therapy, I was like, oh no, I'm great. I know exactly what I'm doing. But my subconscious was making so many decisions without my input that that's even if I was like, just being like, hey, we're supposed to go left here. Like, no, we're going right.
It's a great analogy for it. Actually, there's so many different deeper drivers around why we do what we do. And it is truly the biggest downfall of the health industry that nobody's really talking about. It's kind of like the health industry's little secret. Mm-hmm. Why are there thousands of million, I don't even know, infinite health programs with a new angle? Do this now, do this now, do this now. But nobody's talking about...
Just drink lemon juice for 8 hours a day and you'll detox, blah, blah, blah.
Some variation of a health program. Mm-hmm. And while there's infinite programs out there, what nobody's talking about is why is it that 85 to 95% of them fail long term? Why do people struggle to stick to it? Now, there are some people, like you shared with me, like you had this massive life change and you're like, my life has to change. Some people can have that awareness, get some health information and change their life. Most people can't do that. It's estimated that 85 to 95% of health programs fail long term because there's deeper roots of what really drives our behavior.
Oh, that's interesting. Have you ever read David Brooks's The Second Mountain?
No, but I've heard of it. I'm familiar with it.
So are you from like
the
moment, the mission, the mess?
I'm familiar with the concept, but I haven't read it.
Okay. So he basically talks about how most people, entrepreneurs, business people, have this vision when they're younger of what what happiness looks like, what success means to them. And then they reach it and they're like, why am I not happy?
Right.
Hormozy talks about this, Chris Williamson. It's like, you've already accomplished everything that you said would make you happy, so why aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
And what David Brooks talks about in his book is that there's usually like a moment, a mission, or a mess. So it's like a moment in time, something, or an aha moment, a mission. Oh, I'm really, this is what I'm passionate about now, where I used to be passionate about this. Or in my example, just a total mess. It was like, it was either adapt or die, and I didn't want to die, no matter how much I may have tried. But that was like the catalyst for change. But then you have to, and we see this like in therapy and journey space as well, like the awareness of the insight, the download is great, but the integration is what requires the work. But it's interesting to hear it from a health perspective, that even though I know I'm supposed to be tracking my macros, even though I know I'm supposed to be prioritizing protein, why am I still emotionally eating? Why am I having these cravings for sugar or the sodas or what have you? And what you're saying is that it's really that subconscious driver of decision makers that can kind of like hijack our limbic system and take true control of our operating system.
Yeah, so there's some different complexities around like why we do what we do. And one of them is awareness of our emotions, because our emotions, there's this interesting book. I think that this is an interesting idea. The author is Robert Wright, and he wrote the book Why Buddhism is True. And he talks about this research that scientists have been exploring around this area of the brain called the default mode network in the subconscious mind. And in this book, he says that
was Buddha.
In this book, he says that in the subconscious mind, there's constantly decision-making happening of what choices should we make. So you might be in your subconscious mind, not even aware of it. Should I eat the cookie? Should I not? Should I eat the cookie? Should I not? And this decision-making is floating around in your subconscious. You're not even aware of it. So when they wonder, well, what decision gets propelled to your conscious mind for you to actually take action and eat the cookie or not eat the cookie. And they believe it's the one that's propelled by the most emotion. So if there's a most emotion attached between I should eat the cookie or no, I shouldn't because I feel I really want these health goals, or I feel inspired, or I feel empowered, or I feel sad and I need comfort, whatever one has the most emotion behind it will get propelled to your conscious mind. So without emotional awareness of what's happening and how your emotions are related to your decision making, you might be feeling like you're being controlled by something. So that's just one part.
Yeah, that's what it's not an emotional. Is it an emotional driver? Is it an emotional investment? Because I'm fascinated by your word choice of should I eat the cookie or should I not eat the cookie? Mine is never should. Mine is always want versus need.
Yeah.
I want the cookie. Do I need the cookie? I want the drink. Do I need the drink? I want to sleep in, but do I need to? And so and then I can want, I guess, well, you know what? I say that, but you're right. It never becomes should, but it's still the emotional priority.
Yeah.
Right. Of which one am I more invested in is going to win out.
Well, what's interesting is there's different factors that drive our different food choices. So one of them is feelings. So I always have people explore what are the feelings that are coming up for them. That comes from like your subconscious mind, and your feelings can give you clues as to like what food choices might I be making. And so some people will realize that when they were on autopilot and they were going to just grab a food and they never stopped to question what is driving that food choice. They never stopped to think about it. And then they start slowing down and they create space and they're like, wait a second. And they start asking, what is driving this food choice right now? And sometimes they'll start noticing, oh, wow, I'm actually feeling, maybe it's, I'm feeling comfort because this reminds me of a family member who passed away. Or today I'm feeling something that is creating a relationship to that food. And they're starting to like lift this veil, and they're starting to see this interaction between themselves and their body and the food. And they're like, whoa, this is a deeper relationship I have than what first meets the eye.
Right. Yeah. I'm thinking like I knew my mother loved me when she let me lick the beaters when she was making brownies.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why I love brownies. Because when she made brownies, that on a very subconscious level, that was a bond that we shared.
So now think if somebody was like, hey, you need to go on a diet, no more brownies for you. Consciously, you might be like, yeah, that makes sense. But then you try to take away the brownies, and there might be a deep part of you that is like, I'm actually just lost love and connection to my mother. And then that becomes this very difficult attachment. And people wonder, well, why did I self-sabotage in that moment that I needed love and connection to my mother? And it's that deeper exploration that's going to show you why.
That's really interesting. When I'm working with my clients to address whatever concern they may be confronting, I actually talk about this in the book. I have a phrase that's like, audit yourself with honesty. Like, take a real good hard look and, run your own diagnostics and see if you can identify what it is that's working, what's not working, what dates, drivers, and deliverables are being met within your own operating system. When you're working with your clients to have them kind of get to that, to understand themselves better, what do you have them do to audit themselves with honesty? Is it a thought journal? Is it a food journal? Is it a just because I'm curious, like, is there a difference between like craving and emotional eating? Is binging can be more of a is it a mental thing? I don't know. I'm very curious.
Yeah, these are all great questions.
Yeah,
these are all.
I mean, just talk and I'll jump in there
when I. These are great questions. Okay. Yeah. So I flip things backwards from the diet industry. I'm a classically trained registered dietitian. So I practiced in the traditional model of health, which was learn about health.
Here's the food pyramid.
Here's the food pyramid or plate.
Only eat breads and grains.
Eat this. And it's I think that health information is a useful tool.
Just so in case people don't know, I was being sarcastic. You're not actually supposed to follow the food pyramid.
Right.
You should prioritize protein. Don't eat lots of
Right. I see that that's your philosophy. Yeah. So whatever your health philosophy is, it's like learn about health and nutrition and just apply the information. And so it's I do think that health and nutrition is a super valuable tool. It's empowering to know what choices are best for my body, but it's a very externally focused. And when it doesn't help us understand why we make certain food choices. So the health industry's philosophy is willpower your way through cravings. Do everything you can to avoid your triggers, your cravings. So that might look like leave temptations out of the house. It might look like if you get a craving, distract yourself with water or gum or go for a walk or call a friend or log it or whatever. Maybe take appetite suppressants. Those are a really big thing right now, things like Ozempic and things like that.
Right.
And it's not to judge any of these methods, but the truth is that every one of these methods are avoidance or suppression. And it's
a mask.
It's a mask. It's avoid what is happening inside of your body. And the problem with that is that if you fear any part of your own body, whether it's your appetite, your cravings, your emotion, your lack of self-trust with food, if you avoid any aspect of yourself, it will probably hold its power over you until...
Well, yeah. Also, like if you stop taking Ozempic, you're going to get all that weight back. If you stop taking this diet pill, you're going to get all that weight back. If you stop taking whatever ephedrine,
the Band-Aid,
right?
The Band-Aid.
Yeah, the Band-Aid can't.
I have many students who are now terrified of their own hunger, trying to get off of Ozempic, and they're like, "Now I'm afraid of my own body. I'm afraid of hunger because I've been numb from it for so long. I'm trapped. What do I do?" So,
also, it's not good to not eat.
Right.
Literally. I've lived with ADHD like my entire life, but only got diagnosed like a couple of years ago. And when I started on Vyvanse, it like killed my appetite. So I wasn't eating as much, but I was still working out. I was wondering why my workouts were suffering. It wasn't because even though I was up and functional, I was in such a calorie deficit that I just didn't have the calories to fuel my workouts.
Yeah. And I understand, like, some people are in desperation and they're like, I just don't trust myself with food. I need this. And there's really no judgment of that. I do think that every situation is a personal decision of like,
Mm-hmm.
what is the priority? And I know people are going through a lot of pain with not trusting themselves with their own food and trusting their body and their hunger. And when you're ready to say, I don't want to fear any aspect of my own body, my own hunger, I want to sit with the things that I have lost my power over with my food. I want to sit with those cookies and develop a relationship with it until I trust myself. And so to circle back around to your original question is, instead of focusing on what's right and what's wrong with the foods to eat and avoidance, and I bring people into a closer relationship with their own body, we actually get closer to their cravings and feel them and get to know them on a very intimate level, because you won't ever know how to soothe your own cravings and listen to what it's teaching you until you really get intimate with it and listen to it. And then it's kind of like something that is like a closed fist that you're like, no, don't eat the food. And you're forcing and you're willpowering, and you get intimate with it and you know it. And then it gently, the craving releases.
Right.
And it no longer holds its power over you. And I can say that because I've experienced that really intimately with myself, being a registered dietitian, having so many degrees in health and nutrition, advanced certifications, learning more and more and more, and then feeling like I was going through these times of like, I was trying so hard, focusing, tracking my food, tracking my calories. If appetite suppressants were a thing back then, the Ozempic, I probably would have done it because I didn't feel like I could trust my own body. And then having to go into this deeper connection with myself, I don't feel any control by my food. I feel so in tune with my body and being able to trust it. It's the most beautiful way of approaching health instead of forcing and grit and white knuckling. If you're white knuckling, there's a sign that there's something you don't understand about yourself.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. It's one of those like, no one fears that which they know well. Yeah. There's a concept of, it's either like no one fears that which they know well or stress inoculation. And it's basically,
You might have to break that down for me.
Okay. So stress inoculation is if I put you in an F1 car and tell you need to drive around the track.
This is a very masculine conversation.
At 500 miles an hour, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be white knuckled. You're going to have like fine motor function. Your vision's going to be blurry. You're not going to be able to make decisions. Your heart rate's going to elevate. 100th time around the track, not so much. Your 10,000th time around the track, you're driving with your knee and updating your Instagram, right? Because you've done it. You know how to do it. It's not unfamiliar to you. You have now if anything, you are going to be more concerned because now you understand the realistic risks which are in place. So you're going to make sure all of those safeguards are in place, as opposed to someone who just like watches, whatever that Days of Thunder, Tom Cruise movie, goes, oh yeah, I can do that. And then they get in the car and then they crash right away because they didn't realize how fast the car was.
Yeah, you actually have great spot on analogies that are so relatable, because what so many people, they have it programmed in their mind that cravings are so bad and my self-sabotage is so bad that when we start to go into that old pattern, all of a sudden, all these thoughts come up like, this is terrible, or I need food, and it becomes this very suffering, painful experience. And then when they start to actually go into it and intimately know, what is the feeling that's happening in my body? What am I experiencing right now? And they start to get curious, and that shame turns into curiosity. And then what one of my students told me, she called me, she said, I had the most amazing experience. I had a craving, and normally I would go into this, like, this is horrible, and this spiral. She goes, I actually sat with it in my body, and it felt like this alive energy. And craving can actually feel like it's actually a magnetic desire, and it's a desire towards food. But if we can shift our focus to our own internal experience, there's actually an aliveness. There's like this energy towards it, and it can actually feel like desire, and it can feel like pleasure. And if we can actually not get so fixated on the food, but really feel our experience, we might have more awareness of like, wow, I actually have desire in my body. I have aliveness in my body, or I'm actually seeking love right now, or safety, or connection with my mother. And I can start to use that experience with food to tell me what I'm really needing or desiring. And it becomes like this really amazing experience when we let go of the judgment of it.
How is someone, or what are some of the tools? Well, one, I think the experience of it is something that's really important to drive home. And I want to circle back to that in just one second. But when someone is in getting back to my earlier question about how to audit yourself with honesty, when you're having those cravings, being like, okay, like it's this time of day, it's this time of night. Is it like when I was in therapy, we would do like thought journals.
Yeah.
And like every time I've done it with tasks, I'm a dates, drivers, deliverables guy. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so I want to know everything. Got this from Jason too. He was like, track when you're most effective, track when you're tired, track this stuff. And that way you can kind of schedule your day around when you're going to be the most productive, which is why I do a podcast between 1 and 4, because that's when I'm at my A game. If we had this conversation at like 7 o'clock in the morning, I'd be like, where am I? Mm-hmm. But when people are having those cravings, what are some of the tips, the tricks, some of the takeaways that people can do to go, okay, this is a craving because I'm dehydrated, versus this is emotional eating. This is something that I want to do because I want to do it. This is something I'm doing because I need to do it.
Yes. Yes, you're so hitting the right path of how I help people navigate this. So the first thing that they need to do is, one, come from a place of curiosity, letting go of the shame, allowing curiosity. And when those moments come up, they want to be like their own research project. And so I always have everyone slow down, because when we're in a self-sabotaging moment, we're up in our heads. We're usually on autopilot. It's like we're somewhere else, right? And they're impulsive and reactive. If you just dial things back by slowing down, you can use your breath to regulate your body, you regulate your thoughts and your impulse, and you calm your nervous system. So I have everyone practice. So we talked earlier today about practicing. You can practice for game day.
What was the quote you is really good? Everything outside of a trigger is every moment
practice.
But it was every moment outside of a trigger is a practice?
Yes. Yeah. Every moment that you have in life outside of the moment that you're triggered can be practice. So for example, what I mean by that is when you're in the kitchen and you're in the cupboard and you're triggered and maybe you had a stressful day and you're going to grab chips instead of the salad, it's difficult to practice. I still have people practice in that moment, but you can also be way better at it by practicing for game day. Have you read the book Psycho-Cybernetics?
Not yet.
Okay.
Psycho-Cybernetics?
This is a classic. It's an old school. It's so good.
Who wrote it?
Maxwell Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics. Great book. You would
Great
love
title.
this. Oh, it's so good. Maxwell Maltz.
M-U-L-T-Z?
M-A-L-T-Z.
M-A-L-T-Z.
Yeah, Maxwell Maltz.
Right.
Yeah. Fantastic book. This completely...
Definitely an Irish Catholic.
I integrate this.
Not with the last name like Waltz.
Maltz.
Oh,
M with an M like mom.
Still not Irish Catholic.
Yeah.
Probably German.
So in his book, he talks about how we can use the mind to prepare. And so he talks about how there was a research study done where they had athletes basketball players. Mm-hmm. They had basketball players who practiced, basketball players who did not practice, and then basketball players who used visualization to practice.
Okay. Like sports psychology.
Sports psychology.
Were all these basketball players at basically like the same skill set?
Yeah.
The same skill level? Okay.
I think so. So the ones who actually practiced improved by 24%. Mm-hmm. The ones who used visualization improved by 23%. The ones who didn't practice at all had 0% improvement. Okay. So the ones who actually practiced and the ones who visualized shooting hoops, practicing, were pretty close to head on the outcomes of how much they improved. So his point is that your mind doesn't know the difference if you actually...
So I just want to make sure I understand the concept. So one group did absolutely nothing different.
Nothing.
They just did exactly the same. One group practiced as they would. And the other group never went to the court, but they just visualized what they would do while they were on the court.
Yes.
Got it.
And the ones that visualized and the ones that actually practiced went pretty close, 24% versus 23%.
Interesting.
And
and I'm sorry, I'm a nerd. Was this actual because if it's conditioning, you would think that practicing would actually help. But if you're just standing there like shooting free throws, maybe the visualization is you can get the 10,000 hours in your head versus on the court, and maybe even reduce injury and fatigue and atrophy because you're not overexerting.
Perhaps. It's a really good question. And I did at one point go and look at the original study, but it was years ago. And so I can't really remember the nuances and the details of what was success.
Oh, well, and I do not in any way, shape, or form want to negate the impactful or the impactfulness
Yeah.
or the effectiveness
Sure.
of visualization, because it 1000% works.
Totally.
I've worked with sports psychologists and even in the military and even when in going up and giving speeches, like visualize the win and the win, because it's almost like it's almost like a manifestation.
Yeah. So we can do that with all of our patterns and our behaviors. And we're letting our mind know what is to come. What do we want to practice? What is the right thing?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the time I have people practice using their breath, regulating their nervous system, getting to know their patterns. So they might actually do what you had talked about, where they might write down, okay, at this time, when I come home from work, I tend to go for the chips and I was feeling stressed and overwhelmed. And so I don't make everybody do this, but if they want to get more curious with their patterns, they can actually write down, instead of tracking calories, they're getting curious with like, what are my patterns? And then they can prepare for those patterns. And instead of, so they can start to practice using their breath so that when they get in that moment and they come home from work, they're like, oh yeah, this is that moment that I want to get more curious with.
Mm-hmm.
So they come home from work and they take a breath. When they calm their nervous system, the breath is your most easily accessible, affordable tool. You can have it anytime you want to calm your nervous system. And when you calm your nervous system, cravings come down naturally.
Right.
When your nervous system is triggered and you're in fight or flight, your appetite goes up and you go into this like animalistic like state of where you're on the hunt for carbs, for sugar. So if you come home stressed and your cortisol is high, you're going to be in this revved up animalistic like state, wondering, why do I have no self-control? What's wrong with me? This is a physiology game. It's not your lack of self-control.
Yeah, it's not only a physiology game, but I'm just thinking in terms of like when I'm helping to mitigate like stalking or threatening inappropriate behaviors by inappropriate pursuers, especially if it's like an intimate partner and it's a recent breakup, the likelihood of them reaching out and being disreputable is between like midnight and 3 a.m. on a Friday night, because they've been drinking their problems away and then they get home alone and all they can think to do is just be problematic. Right. Whereas they're not doing that at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning because they're at work and they're distracted.
Absolutely. So when their nervous system is regulated, they're more in rational thinking.
Right.
So if you've ever had a day where like it's sunny outside and a good song comes on and you're motivated and you're happy and you feel good and you're like, I'm going to eat the salad forever. I'm never going to eat those cookies again. And then almost like instantly, it's like something takes over your brain and you eat the food and then you're like, what the heck? I just had so much motivation. That's the difference between your nervous system working of like when you're calm and happy.
Oh, yeah.
You're in rational thinking. When you go into like stress state, that's what takes over your brain.
Or the opposite of that. Back in my drinking days, I would wake up on a Saturday morning and go, oh my God, I feel like shit, I'm never going to drink again. But then Saturday night after that hangover dissipated, I was right back to it. Then Sunday morning, the cycle repeats.
Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing that people do with food. It definitely brings more awareness. And I think awareness can be one of your most impactful tools, where I think the health industry tends to put so much judgment around our behaviors. And it's like, just use more motivation, just use more willpower to not do that again. But if you find yourself in these repeat cycles and you're like, why don't I have more willpower? Why don't I have more discipline? That's a sign to you that you actually want to move towards the thing that you're having trouble looking at and understand its deep roots. Is there a feeling behind it? Is there something that you learned? You know, if you watched your parents not take care of themselves or self-sacrifice, and you learned that taking care of yourself is selfish, then taking care of yourself is going to hit this deep trigger of like, I'm selfish, or I don't deserve to take care of myself. And if you try to tell someone to take care of themselves, but they have this deep learning from childhood that that's selfish, or you don't deserve it, or you can't do it, it's going to be met with resistance. Health will feel hard. They'll sabotage it every time.
Is, in you saying that, what I have this hypothesis, and tell me if you think I'm wrong. Coming home from work, stressed, needing that food to emotionally re-regulate or balance out, would that fall into the confines of emotional eating as opposed to craving? Like, I just feel like I need food because I'm dehydrated or nurtured, and then on the craving side, why do we crave different kinds of food?
So I'm going to break down 4 different types of cravings that you actually just described. Yeah, we didn't even talk about this before, but I put them in 4 core categories.
Okay.
And So you can see which one people can explore which one do they identify with, and then that's going to help you understand how do I address it. So the first craving type is like a food-based, which is I just need food. And so if you think about when you haven't had food for too long and then you hit that, I call it like the zombie attack where you're like, give me food, I'll eat anything now. You're hangry.
Like Snickers makes a whole...
You could eat your own arm. You could eat anything. You go like zombie mode.
I don't care what it is, just give me something.
Right. That when you have that feeling, you can feel that blood sugar drop. Great. This person probably needs more food. They need to prepare better. They need snacks. They need protein. They need water. They can almost instantly fix that problem and the cravings go away. Oh, I needed to balance out my blood sugar, right? That's the food category. The second category is a mood-based craving.
Okay.
This is like when you have really low serotonin, which is really common. Low serotonin is a very much more common experience than what people realize because a lot of things in our environment deplete our serotonin. And one of the biggest things is protein allows you to make serotonin. And so when people don't eat enough protein, they are at a high risk for low serotonin. Also, things like artificial sweeteners, caffeine, alcohol also depletes serotonin levels. So carbohydrates can temporarily increase serotonin. So if you eat you'll crave carbohydrates if you have that depressed, melancholy, sad, kind of like I don't feel happy. And it's just this kind of like
that makes sense because like after like assisted therapy, they always have us take like 5-HTP to kind of like recalibrate out.
Well, 5-HTP is the building blocks for serotonin. 5-hydroxytryptophan. Yeah. So
what? And I'm sorry,
keep going.
Spencer Coursen sidebar. What is the value of serotonin? Like, is it like dopamine is like makes us happy, and what does serotonin do?
So serotonin elevates your mood. It can calm anxiety. It can help you sleep at night. You can just feel happier. So
serotonin just balances out your mood.
Yeah, balances out your mood. You feel happier. You have a more positive, optimistic outlook on life. So when you feel this kind of depressive or anxious melancholy, and so this is like when you have a craving, oftentimes at night. Serotonin is often better in the morning. So typically people won't have cravings in the morning with this type, but later in the day they might, or in the evening. If you wake up in the middle of the night with food cravings, there's a high probability that you have a serotonin issue. So that can be corrected with trying 5-HTP. Of course, I recommend working with somebody, may not work well, may not play well with medications, antidepressants.
Always consult with your doctor.
Consult with your doctor before trying anything, but increasing protein intake. So that's like the mood-based craving. And some people who do have low serotonin, I've had some people who take 5-HTP and the next day they're like, I feel like a new human being. My outlook is better. My mood is better. I don't even have cravings anymore. And so they know typically within 1 to 2 weeks, some people see a difference between 1 to 2 days. This isn't everyone who has cravings, but for the mood-based cravings, I really do see people see such a big shift in their mood, in the cravings that they have related to food. It's huge.
Have you noticed, or do you recommend, or are you familiar with any of the guidelines on like the best time of day to take 5-HTP? Because I've heard some people say, oh, it's best to take it before bed. I've heard some people say, hey, it's best to take it when you wake up. I've heard people say, just take it.
Yeah, I don't know if I've gone so deep to know if there's benefits with those nuances. I think you want to...
It's like you don't want to take melatonin in the morning because that's going to mess with your circadian rhythm.
As far as I know, I don't think that it matters the timing. I think that it's more like you want to stay around 150 milligrams to start, play with up to 300 milligrams and see how you feel. If you don't feel any difference, then you might not need the 5-HTP.
Okay, so of the 4, we have food and mood.
We have food and mood. So the next one would be nervous system.
Interesting. Like your central nervous system or your emotional nervous system?
We're going to talk about that. Okay. So this one is your stress and your cortisol levels. When your cortisol is elevated, when your stress is elevated, it will feel like 1 minute you're happy, you have all this willpower, you're never going to eat the cookies again. And then the next minute, it feels like something took over your brain and you go into like this hypnosis or this animalistic like state where all of a sudden you just grab a food and you just like can't stop. And then all of a sudden your brain comes back online and you're like, What did I just do? Why would I do that? I have goals. The switching back and forth between rational thinking and hypnosis is your nervous system. And I want to explain this and break this down a little bit.
Okay. Because I've definitely done this. I have 1000% been like, okay, I'm eating like super clean today. And then like an hour later, I'm halfway through a bag of Fritos and I don't even realize it.
Yeah. So this is what's happening inside the body. And stop me if this doesn't make sense. Okay, so when you're in
Thank you for assuming I'm smart. I'm not. Okay.
Well, sometimes I get so used to explaining this, and then some people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. So feel free to stop me.
Say that part again.
Okay. So what happens is your body, your brain is always scanning, am I safe? Right?
Yes. 100%.
The brain is always scanning the external environment, the internal environment. Am I safe? When your brain is like, we're safe, this goes all the way back to caveman days.
This is evolutionary.
This is evolutionary
biology.
This is not new, right? So that's your prefrontal cortex working in your brain. When you are safe, you have rational thinking. So you're like, I have health goals. It makes sense to eat the salad. I'm going to lose weight. And you're making good choices. People who have a regulated nervous system and they feel safe, their brain feels safe. You know, that person who's like, oh yeah, I just decided one day I was going to be healthy and I made the choice and I did it and it was easy. And you're like, how did you do that? So easy, right? This is the prefrontal cortex working. You have good executive decision making.
Yes. Executive
function is happening in the brain. This is only online when your brain and your body perceives that you're safe. When things shift and all of a sudden it's like there's a threat to our survival, the prefrontal cortex goes offline and your amygdala, your fight or flight area of the brain, takes priority. And survival is always the priority over like health, weight loss, whatever. It's survival, right? You know this. Risk assessment, our number one priority is, are we safe? Are we okay?
Yeah, survival.
Survival, number one. So let's say a long time ago, this was supposed to be temporary. When you're running from a tiger or you're running from a wild animal or you're in fasting and starvation, this is supposed to be temporary to get you through survival. But for us on a day-to-day basis, we're like, oh my gosh, emails, bills, people, things that are stressing me out. I'm thinking all day long. We're in a constant state of fight or flight. If you go into that fight or flight or something hits you and it activates a stress response and your cortisol goes up, your amygdala turns online, it shifts your body's entire physiology instantly. So you might notice like heart rate goes up a little bit. I mean, these are little nuances that you might not even notice, but people will start tensing, their heart rate goes up, and your body shifts to an animalistic like survival state. And what's so interesting is when they've done research on people in this state, they have found that even their taste buds will change shape for food to taste better and sweeter. And so your body, everything in your body will start to shift to drive you to seek food. It's like this, there's a threat to survival. We need this human to seek food. And sugar and carbohydrates in particular are quick energy if you had to run from a wild animal. So it's going to drive your inherent mechanisms to go eat and to eat excess calories, anything that feels like safety and survival.
How much of that fact influences marketing and advertising of food? Which is like why the burger on the menu never looks as good as the burger on the plate.
Totally.
Right. Or I was on a photo shoot once and it was like for cereal or something. And they put marbles in the bottom of the bowl and then poured the cereal on top of the marbles, then filled it up with milk because they wanted the cereal to look like it was like coming up out of the milk because it made it more appealing, it made it more attractive, it made it look more delicious.
You know, when I was going to school to be a dietitian, they played a recording. I don't know how they got access to this recording or where it was from, but there was a recording of, you think that all these higher ups in the companies like Taco Bell and Doritos and KFC and whatever, you have this idea that they're competing, but they played a recording of a phone call where they had a round table and they were discussing the secret formulation of how are they reaching the bliss point in their food. And the bliss point is where they have the perfect combination of flavors, textures.
Sweet, salt, fat.
You hit a state of bliss that you almost cannot control. You almost just, it creates like addictive like properties. And it was fascinating to listen to them openly discussing what formulation are you doing to reach the bliss point?
That's really interesting because I don't know if it was like how I made this but McDonald's is the only of those fast food chains who, in like the fountain drinks, puts on offer Coca-Cola exactly how Coca-Cola recommends it be. It's the perfect combination of syrup to carbonation.
Interesting.
Whereas other places will, because carbonation is cheaper, will increase the carbonation because the syrup's more expensive.
Interesting.
And so that's why at Taco Bell, the Diet Coke tastes different than Wendy's, tastes different than Chick-fil-A, tastes different than In-N-Out.
So look at what you're up against. Let's say you are running on stress, which everybody who I work with is high stress, and it becomes the norm, right? And I experienced this too when I knew so much about health and I was so motivated, but then instantly it seemed like something took over my brain and I would go into this hypnosis-like state. And there was no amount of shaming or willpower or tracking my food that helped me overcome that. I always thought I needed more willpower, more discipline, more intensity. And it actually didn't. What I needed was to learn how to bring my stress down. And so I could go into that moment of in that hypnosis and start using my breath and learning how to regulate. And then when you regulate your nervous system and you calm down that cortisol and that stress and you feel what's really going on, you'll feel your brain start to switch. And then you get out of that amygdala-like state and your prefrontal cortex is back online. And now you're thinking rationally. Now it's like, oh, it's easy for me to decide, do I want to have a little bit of the cookie, but I feel good. I can eat some, I can walk away, or I can eat the salad if those are my goals. The goal isn't to eat perfect. The goal is to feel like you're in choice. And it's hard to do that when you're in that hypnosis state.
You know what I just realized? Remember earlier when I said, oh, this definitely hits me because sometimes you're like, I'm going to eat really healthy. And the next thing I know, I'm like halfway through a bag of Fritos. Yeah. It always happens while I'm watching television or sports or a movie or streaming something. I'm never present. I'm never like psychologically present when I'm on autopilot. I'm not thinking of it, which makes me think how much of media diet or social media or doom scrolling can kind of put us in that, oh my God, the world's burning. I need to stay safe. I need to go do something.
For sure. I mean, I would imagine that all of that is activating our stress response. I mean, you can just kind of feel it when you internally get sucked into something. And so we are in a culture that encourages disembodiment. And embodiment is like having that awareness of your own body. You have this awareness of your feelings, your hunger, your fullness. But when you're constantly pulled up here and you're thinking about food, social media, and your attention is being pulled externally, your awareness moves out of your body. And so people wonder, like, why can't I trust feeling my hunger or my fullness? And it's because your awareness hasn't been down in here. It's being pulled up here. And so we do have to put in an effort to pull our awareness from constantly being out here and take the time to pull it back down and ask, what am I feeling? Am I hungry? Is this a craving? If it's a craving, how do I work with it? What's this craving telling me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's really interesting because we know a lot of the same people. I'm not going to use their names here, but You'll know who I'm talking about. But a facilitator was, are you in your mind? Are you in your body? Are you in your spirit? So, and I was like, what does being in your body mean? Like that was something that was just like so foreign to me.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, listen, I was an accountant for 20 years. I lived in my head and now I'm full time in my body. I was like, well, I would love to be able to learn how to make that switch. But in doing the work, I have. And now I can kind of pivot back and forth between the two, depending on where I am, what I need, how I'm trying to interact with whatever I'm dealing with at that moment. But how do people know? Does breath work help? Does meditation help? Does mindfulness help? What do you think are some of the, and I know we still have, let's get to the fourth one and then we'll circle back.
Yeah, that sounds great. So the fourth one is actually subconscious, which is where the subconscious holds our feelings, which is what is connected to emotional eating. And I think of emotional eating is kind of like if you have a bucket and the emotion gets too uncomfortable to be with and the bucket overspills and overflows and it becomes too much. When that emotion becomes too difficult to be with, then I need food to help me make it through, whether it's bringing the feeling of pleasure when I'm really uncomfortable, or it's just helping me avoid that feeling, or it's helping me bring safety to my nervous system during this emotion. So if the path to healing emotional eating is creating enough safety to say, am I willing to slowly feel this emotion and get curious with what it is that's here? Where a lot of us were taught as a child, stop crying, your feelings are bad, you're going to get punished if you feel. If you get punished for crying as a child and you have to go to timeout, that's probably as an adult, you might be feeling this feeling is sad or this feeling of sadness is wrong. I need something to make it go away because it's wrong. When you change your relationship to sadness, you don't need something to make sadness go away. You feel comfortable feeling it.
And I think that's one of the reasons, I'll use I statements. I know that one of the precursors that kind of like led up to my suicide attempt was there was a million contributing factors, but one was in the middle of COVID when this was really going on. Like, I was alone. Ronan would go to sleep because he was still a puppy, and I would just start drinking. And then I'd be like, oh, well, okay, well, I'm gonna have some peanut butter pretzels. And then the next thing I know, like the entire bin of peanut butter pretzels is gone. Because normally I would go outside, I would go for a run, I'd get a workout in, I would go out with friends, but we were so isolated. And I think that's why you saw codependency skyrocket, you saw addiction skyrocket, you saw alcoholism skyrocket, because there weren't a lot of options available to you if you were home alone in an apartment in a city.
It's also kind of beautiful too when we look at it is that like we look at this, even things with emotional eating, food addiction, self-sabotage, it can be like this very heavy thing, but we can also see a lot of beauty in it, that what it tells us is my heart was in so much heartbreak, or my heart was hurting so much, I didn't have the capacity to be with my experience. And sometimes when we can see the beauty in that and love and honor that part of us that maybe needs food, has needed it in the past, or maybe is still needing it, when we can fall in love with that deep appreciation for what it's doing for us, then we can begin healing the deep relationship with it, finding that appreciation and trusting if I can hold space for myself and my feelings when I'm ready to release this dependence of needing food to avoid my experience, it will. I can do that when I have the courage, and I might not be ready yet, but when I do have the courage of like, I want to be fully an active participant in my feelings and my experience, then I can gently thank the food for being there for me to help me get through that really hard time.
I'm going to tie this back to what we that was a perfect way to wrap that up. When you talk about beyond health information and you talk about emotional, it's physiological, it's nutritional, it's physical, it makes me think of when I'm doing security audits and people are like, oh no, I have cameras. I'm like, great. Cameras are one part.
Yeah.
So if you have like the 5 Ds, deter, detect, deny, delay, defend, the cameras are detect. Right. So it's like that's 1 of 5. You still need all the other things in order to have this comprehensive security package. Nutrition is one component of a healthy living lifestyle of emotional, of physical, of nutritional, of psychological. How are you able to kind of get people to buy into that concept that yes, like eating is 85% of your, well, actually, is that true? Is it true that like your diet is like your physical composition is 85% diet? Or is that just like one of those things they put on the teleprompter to get you to buy into a program?
I think that the purpose of saying that is that you can't out-exercise. You can't eat whatever you want and out-exercise it, that what you eat is such a huge factor.
Right.
But there's so many deeper factors that influence what you eat and why and how much.
And is that just simply because your capacity for consumption is just far superior to your ability to exertion?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that let's say most people go spend an hour in the gym and maybe they burn 500 calories and then they can walk out and they can eat 2,000 calories for lunch. And it's just like what you are putting into your body, I think is very important. The food choices that you make. But also you can be more liberal and flexible if you're like, yeah, I ate some of the cookie and then I felt good. I felt content. It's all about being in choice. I feel healthier in my body than ever.
Yeah.
And I'm less restrictive than ever. Like I let myself eat a little bit, but because I can tune in and regulate my nervous system, I don't feel that hypnosis anymore. Where before, when I was in that hypnosis of I lose control, I was so strict with my eating and I was trying so hard and it felt like I had to exercise so hard and force my body. And then I would like lose control. I think self-trust is the best thing that you could really invest in, because then you can eat healthy because it feels good. You're choosing to. You can also enjoy life's pleasures. Like you can eat the cookie or whatever, but you're like, great, I can eat it and I can walk away and be done, versus like I lost control. I ate 2,000 calories of cookies. It's the roller coaster that really makes it hard.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. When I was in survival mode, right, it was, oh, I want a cookie, and then I would eat like the whole sleeve of Oreos.
Right.
Now that I'm in like thriving mode, it's like, oh, I want an Oreo. Okay, I'll eat half of one cookie.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know what? Yeah, it tastes great, but it's not as rewarding as I thought it was. Whereas before it would, it's not as rewarding as maybe the fifth one will be the reward. But getting my mind right and getting myself to a point where those things became a want rather than a need, like having agency and making it about a decision, gave me the power over the things rather than the things having power over me.
That's it. That's it. And when you think about like a restrictive diet, you can't have this. Take the temptations out of your house. Record your food and report back to me what you ate. Suppress your appetite. All of that you can't, don't trust yourself, disempowering. But when you can sit with that food and say, do I want this? Does this honor my body? And it doesn't feel like a war. That's freedom. That's health. That's thriving.
That's interesting.
And it's okay if we don't know how to get to that point, but that's where the exploration is like, where are the places of where I can't sit with this food? How does it make me feel? What comes up for me when I sit with these places that I don't feel like I have self-control?
So I want to just recap. We have the 4 categories of cravings. We have food-based, mood-based, nervous-based, and subconscious-based. I have a friend, old friend, married, kids, living a great life. But for a couple years, she would wake up in the middle of the night and just go downstairs, open the fridge, and just sleep eat. Basically, it got to the point where like her husband would have to like literally lock the refrigerator before they went to bed every night, because they'd wake up and he'd come downstairs like, what happened here? It looks like the gremlins were let out. Which of those 4 categories would that fall into?
I think that takes more of self-exploration. It's possible it could be low blood sugar food. Probably not, but let's say if she wore a continuous glucose monitor, she could see, is my blood sugar stable throughout the night? Some people do wake up and they need food because they hit like a low blood sugar dip. It could be that she has stress and her nervous system is activated. It could be subconscious. I remember listening to a podcast by the sleep expert Matthew Walker, and he was saying that with sleepwalking, it's a different state of sleep that I might not be perfectly repeating what he's saying, but it's a different state of sleep. And what people will do is they'll do their most familiar behaviors. So they'll often go to the bathroom, or they'll eat, or they'll do
like
something.
Autopilot.
They do something autopilot. So it's interesting that it could just be the state of sleep, that they're on autopilot. It could be there is a connection between night eating and trauma and trying to regulate the nervous system during sleep.
Oh, interesting.
So I think it takes a little bit more of a deeper exploration. Is there a nervous system thing happening in the middle of the night with sleep?
Yeah. I think that's a very fair point. And I think with all of this, like everyone is so unique in their own biology, physiology, psychology, what have you, that everyone should audit themselves with honesty. But I know that, and I'm not someone who like night eats, but I know that if I did not prioritize protein that day, or if I did not eat a lot that day just because I was busy or distracted or what have you, and I have a really hard workout, right around like 2:30 in the morning, I'm going to wake up and be like, I need a sandwich. I need
blood
a protein
sugar.
shake. Oh, so that's more blood sugar?
I think so, because it seems like you
like
probably
an insulin drop.
You didn't eat enough food and you worked out, so your demands for more calories or
My
carbohydrates
body's
or
looking for
food.
the-
Yeah. So your body is just burnt, like, especially you have so much muscle that like your body is burning up that fuel. So when your fuel levels, this would be like the food one. If your food gets too low, then your brain picks up the signal. Wake up, we need food. You might starve if you don't have food. So
No, yeah,
to me, it
no,
seems
yeah,
like
no,
for
that's-
you, it's probably the food one.
Yeah, and let's put you honest, like it's not that often, but it does happen.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's cool though. You're using, like you said, what did you call it?
Audit yourself with honesty.
Audit yourself with honesty, right?
Yeah.
So you're just like, cool, here's the thing that happens. Here's what happened earlier in my day. Let's backtrack. Let's gather some data, some research, and understand it. Where most people are like, I have so much shame and judgment around this time I had the food, and that just keeps you stuck.
Yeah, and full credit, that's not mine. My guy said that to me because I would be writing these these thought journals when I was in CBT, and he'd be like, is this how you felt, or is this how you wanted me to think you felt, or is this how you wanted to feel? Because I don't believe this. He's like, I need you to audit yourself with honesty.
I love that.
Yeah. And I was like, damn it. But he was right. You're right. But and once I did, because I wasn't getting better. So we did these two things. One was this really great workbook that I can't recommend enough called Mind Over Mood. And I still use it today. And what's fascinating about it, so I still do this like Therapy Thursday thing. So every Thursday night I go back, and because it's basically like, here's a scenario, here's how this person handled it. It asks some questions about like, well, why do you think these people acted that way? And then like it poses it, well, how would you behave this way? And what's really fascinating is going back and seeing how I would have, or how I did answer them, because they're written there, but then how I would answer them today, and the variance between the two is really fascinating.
Wow.
But he was basically like, if what you're writing is true, we would be on step 5 and 6, not 2 and 3. So
I love
do you
that.
want to keep sabotaging your own success, or do you want to get on board here?
I love that.
Yeah. I love people that call me on my bullshit.
And that is really the place of growth, is when you can really get radically honest with yourself. When you can get very radically honest with, where are you right now? What are you really struggling with? What's coming up for you? And when you let go of that self-judgment and you can just get radically honest, that's where the real transformation happens.
And getting back to how this conversation got started and why I'm glad we got to finish it today, us showing up for our clients with compassion and love and understanding allows them to do the same. We can create a safe container, a safe space, a judgment-free zone for them to be their raw, real, and authentic selves, so that our methodologies and prescriptions and our way of helping them can help them to help themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when people are going through it, I'm like, oh, I know. I have been there. I have been in the trenches. I am right there with you. I understand. Yeah. And let's go. Let's keep moving. Let's keep going into it. I'm right there with you. Right.
I appreciate it. Okay. We're going off topic. This was great, by the way.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I end every podcast with 5 questions.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you your 5 questions right now.
All right. Lay it on me.
You can be as honest, real, and raw as you want. Okay. When you were a kid, what is something that you could do that you could get lost in?
I'm going to say something that I can get lost in now that continues for me as an adult, but dance. Like I love music and I love dance, and I feel like that's been something that since as young as I can remember.
Zouk? What's the dance you're trying now? Zouk dance?
It's called Zouk. I'm new to it. I'm only like a year in. Zouk.
Zouk.
And I think I've always felt music deeply and feel it in my body, and it almost feels like a moment to just like get out of my mind and come into presence. And so but I can connect to just dancing since I was a kid.
I went to school to be a music major before my life went in a completely different direction.
Wow.
And yeah, I wanted to work with coma patients. You know, coma patients, they still have auditory capability, but they can't, they have no motor function, but they can still hear. So people come out of a coma being like, oh, I remember dad talking to me and telling me that story, or mom reading me this book, or, Sarah playing me this song or whatever. So I wanted to, like when you're working out and you're kind of tired and fatigued, and that one song comes on that can, and just like,
Yeah,
I like to run. It makes me smile. I think I'll go another mile. Like,
yes.
I wanted to go and like research their lives and then come up with like a soundtrack to their life, and then using music and like hook them up to like, like a brainwave or see if I could using like a physiological response to external stimuli, like emotionally ramp them out of a coma using music.
Wow.
I thought that'd be like really cool.
That's fascinating. Maybe your next career.
Yeah, wound up reading a book by Tom Clancy, joined the Army, and my life went in a different direction. But there we have it. Question number 2.
Okay.
Aliens. Fact or fiction?
Undecided.
Okay. But I don't mean like little green men need to be like, at Area 51, but like
there's got to be more than what we know. I would say there's got to be more than what we know. So I'm going to say fact.
Yeah, I mean,
we're going to go with fact.
Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson, I thought, had the best explanation for it. He's like, regardless if you believe in like UFOs or the X-Files or what have you, the reality is that if you took a pint glass and walked out to the ocean and filled it and put it on the bar, that's how much we know about space.
Right.
Like if space is all the water on planet Earth, that pint glass is how much we've explored. And
that universe is something I know hardly nothing about. I study the inner universe, which is infinite exploration, but this is where my studies have been. So I'm going to say fact.
Yeah. I mean, just, it's
got to be fact.
It's got to be fact. Okay. This is a new question I've been asking, and I've never gotten the same answer twice. I am fascinated by the answers people give me. There is no right or wrong answer.
No pressure.
No, it's not. It's really fun. So you have a time machine. You can go back and spend as much time as you want, anywhere you want, with anyone you want. You can't change anything. Okay. Like you can't stop Rome from burning. You can't stop COVID from happening. You can't kill Hitler, but you can go back anytime. Can't go forward. You can only go back, but you can experience anything for as long as you want. And then you can come back. Everything will remain as it was. But you will have this insight, this experience, this understanding that you can then share.
It's got to be dinosaurs.
No one has said dinosaurs.
Oh, yes. It's got to be dinosaurs.
That wasn't mine, but I love dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs.
That's really cool. I had my niece and nephew in here one day, and they were visiting from Annapolis, and I asked my nephew that question, and he said he wanted to go back and see his mom be born. I was like, no one said that.
That's adorable.
Yeah. He went to see his mom as a kid.
Wow.
I was like,
good answer.
He was like, because then I'll understand her. I was like, you're going to be a psychiatrist. I know you want to be a veterinarian, but you're going to be. So I also asked him, like, I was like, hey, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said a vet. And I got like really proud. I thought he wanted to be a soldier. He was like, no, I not. He goes like, not like zoo animals, but like, like wild horses and things in nature. And I was like,
that's sweet.
Question number 4. What is something that you absolutely believe to be true that a lot of people believe to be false?
This feels like I'm just repeating myself at this point, but I feel like that we don't actually need all of these things we're busy and distracted with like all the dieting and tracking, and that like you can totally trust yourself and your body. And I don't think most people believe that.
But it requires like full faith and confidence.
It requires some faith and confidence.
Does faith and confidence build as it becomes more accepted?
Yeah. Okay. But sometimes people just borrow my own belief. They're like, I don't believe it, but you do, so I'll borrow your belief as I'm learning. I'm like, great.
That's very common. People don't know why people are. I mean, this is why they have celebrities and public figures and, read scripts and promote, political candidates or philosophies or the environment or what have you. It's like they don't actually believe this. They're being paid to say this because they know you'll follow whatever they say.
Yeah. And sometimes that's the benefit of hiring somebody is like, I don't believe it, but you believe it. So I'm going to just pay to borrow your belief in me.
Well, I mean, I 100% have experienced that in my own profession, where it's like they absolutely, if they were just honest with themselves, could address the underlying concerns of their problem and solve it themselves. But and I've been guilty of this myself too. I just either don't have the skill set or the awareness or the openness or the trust of self to know that I'm right. And by having someone else tell me I am gives me the confidence to move forward. It's almost like permission to treat myself better, right? To, hey, you know what? If you stop spending all your money, you can save money. Oh, I'm allowed to do that? Yes. Oh, and then it's like, an epiphany. It's like,
Totally.
I had so many like improperly framed expectations of like who I was, what I thought I was, what I thought others wanted of me. And I was like, And then once my guy was just like, you don't actually have to do that, right? I was like, well, that would have been nice to know. Like
sometimes
30 years
you need
ago.
one person to give you permission.
But you also have to be ready for that permission to be granted.
Absolutely.
Right? Like I think there's a lot of modalities. There's a lot of practitioners. But if you can find the right modality, the right practitioner, and you're willing to do the work, like what's the old, I don't know who, Chris Williamson, I learned it from him, but I don't know who the originator was, but it's like the magic you're looking for is on the other side of the work you're not doing or the work you're avoiding. Like do the work, magic will find you. It's one of those,
Totally.
The harder I work, the luckier I get.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah. But
that's a really good answer. Okay, we'll get you out of here on this. They often say that if we saw ourselves in the wild, we wouldn't like people see us differently than we see ourselves. How do you want to occur to others?
My favorite thing that feels just so nourishing to me when people say is that they just feel like I'm a safe space for them to get to know themselves.
I like that.
Yeah, like
a
that.
Safe space for people to get to know themselves.
Yeah, that they feel safe with me to really explore any parts of themselves. Mm-hmm. And one of my students said, this was really one of the most meaningful things that somebody said to me. She said, you show people the truth of who they are. And people get so stuck in their own, like, I can't do this, or I'm this, or I'm that. And it's like, no, let's just like look at the truth here. Like, the truth is, you haven't believed that you could, or you have this stress, or you have this emotion that you haven't been able to deal with. And so none of like your coping mechanisms, like your food, you're not bad at dieting, or you're not a binge eater. That's not who you are. You're just using it to help you through this time.
Yeah.
And I just loved that I loved her saying that, like, I feel safe to explore myself, and you just show people the truth of who they are.
Yeah. Justin, our friend, he kind of helped me. He was like, hey man, like there's your past and there's the trauma and there's the history and then there's the story you tell yourself. Right? You can tell yourself a different story.
Beautiful.
And I was like, oh, because like he was the first friend I made where I just masked warts and all, just like, hey man, this is me. He's like, hey, you're cool. He's like, really?
What? Seriously?
That was awesome. This was so much fun. Thank you so very much. Gina Worful, Mastering Mindfulness Institute. If people want to learn more about you, where is the best place for them to go?
If you want to keep going deeper on like this exploration, I'm in the process as of right now of doing a 6-part series that it's on YouTube on the Mastering Mindfulness Institute. It's called Deeper Than Dieting. So I go through what are each of the core parts that I take my students through to get to know themselves better, their cravings, their body, their mind, how all these things influence why they do what they do. So I think that's a really great place to start.
Well, so if they go on YouTube, is it the Mastering Mindfulness Institute? Okay.
That's my channel, is the Mastering Mindfulness Institute, and I have a 6-part series called Deeper Than Dieting.
Deeper Than Dieting.
Uh-huh.
Instagram, LinkedIn?
Yeah, Instagram. I'm both on there, Gina.Worful. And Mastering Mindfulness just got its own Instagram.
Gina Worful?
Gina.Worful.
Gina.Worful. GINAWORFUL.
Yep. WORFUL. Yep.
Wonderful. We'll put it on the show notes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so
much.
With ease and grace.
Cheers.